It all started with a dream and a vision, led to 8 months of sacrificed weekends and a lot of hard work. You've been along for the journey with us. Today we are putting the finishing touches on and revealing our vintage kitchen renovation.
What are you doing? What is this?
We left you last time before making our final decision on paint color. We were between two shades pulled from a historical collection: Hampshire Gray, which is a muted neutral green, and Crownsville Gray, a slightly darker green with more brown undertones. We landed on Hampshire Gray and found that it added the perfect contrast to the space while bringing in that historical charm that we were after. The hardware is the jewelry of the kitchen, and while this was a very budget-focused project, I recognize the importance of selecting the right pieces and where we should splurge. This was one of the areas that we decided to splurge a little bit, so we chose a mix of knobs, pulls, and latches for a high-end look, and they're all in an unlacquered brass finish so that they naturally patina over time, and it allowed me to select from multiple retailers knowing that they would all match. My personal favorite are these Victorian bale dresser pulls. We found these on an antique reproduction site, and we used 2 knobs atop this drawer set, and it created a furniture-like feel. Maybe a little unconventional, but definitely a memorable touch in our kitchen. Now for the range hood. We weren't sure if we could pull this off, but we had a vision for this gorgeous dark stained oak range hood that would span the entire wall, connecting the 2 countertop sitting cabinets. We started by building a box around our ventless hood, which uses changeable filters, and while this may not be everyone's first choice, for us it was an upgrade because we didn't actually even have a vent hood prior to this renovation. We worked through harsh temps and snowy days to get this thing just right. We decided to split the design into 3 sections, so 2 boxes on the sides, which would be flush with the tower cabinets, and the one in the middle, which houses the hood vent, protrudes out a bit, and then we were able to wrap a mantle around that piece so that I would have an area to decorate and just kind of have a focal point for this thing. For the front of our range hood, we used 3/4 inch high quality red oak plywood. This could absolutely be done with thinner plywood. Had it been available to us in the size that we needed, we probably would have gone with maybe a 1/2 inch. In order to mount these pieces to our framing, we were going to obviously have to screw them in place, meaning we were going to have screw holes that needed to be hidden away. So to create our decorative boxes on each section and hide away the screw holes, we used these red oak hardwood pieces that we also stained, and then we will actually put these in place with a pin nailer. Now, when planning all of this, we had to be really diligent in ensuring that the framing allowed for the added depth of not only the plywood, but also these small pieces, keeping those side panels flush with the cabinets. As for the crown molding, in my initial design, I had a more ornate style crown molding that I absolutely loved, but we needed something that not only felt historic, but could also be purchased in raw wood so that we could paint it for the areas above the cabinets and then stain it for the areas above the range hood. We knew that these needed to be the same because they're going to connect directly with one another. We ended up finding this beautiful dental crown, and honestly, I love it more than the original idea. It feels like a slightly elevated version of the trim throughout our home on the main floor, which is truly one of its most beautiful qualities. And while painting and staining all of that detail was a challenge, the payoff was totally worth it. Now back to the range hood, this process had to be done in steps, taking time and patience. It was truly like a puzzle to piece it all together. For the mantle that we built, we used a piece of chair rail and a piece of crown molding. On top of that, we glued it together, nailed it together, and then stained it. This is going to be a great spot for art, candlesticks, greenery. You guys know I love to decorate for the season, so it's going to be perfect for that. Now, using a gel stain did present a bit of a challenge. So most pieces needed 2 coats, which required 24 hours between them. And then once you have your final coat done of the stain, you then have to wait 72 hours for it to dry before you can add any finishing coats of poly. While the long dry time can really stretch out a project, and it did in this case, I find that the gel stain gives really consistent results, especially for a project like this, where some of the trim couldn't be purchased in red oak to match the other pieces. The stain yielded a much more consistent color across different wood finishes. After getting all of the pieces stained and finished, we were able to finally install them. And this again was kind of a puzzle. We had to really think through the process of how we were going to do this. The mantelpiece had to be screwed in from the back before we put up the pieces that cover up kind of the opening on the bottom. And we had to have the boxes formed before we could do the crown molding since it overlays it. So definitely just took us some time to think through it. Obviously, minor adjustments still had to be made, even with the most precise planning. That's just kind of the way that it goes. But the one thing that we did end up having an issue with on this day was we made a wrong cut with some crown molding and had to purchase a whole new piece of crown molding. And as we spoke about earlier, the staining process takes several days. And so it pushed our project out about a week, but I'm happy to report that we did eventually finish it, and we are so, so happy with how it turned out. If you didn't know this, my husband doesn't have any carpentry experience. Obviously, neither of us do, but he built most of this thing himself. I helped with like the staining and the designing, but he just absolutely blew me away with the way he crafted this thing. Anyway, kudos to him for making my vision become a reality. We did use 1/4-inch plywood to create pieces to go up underneath and cover the bottom of the range hood. Now, I did do extra coats of polyurethane on these pieces so that hopefully they will hold up to any moisture. Only time will tell. If we had to pull it back down and rethink this, we definitely could do that. But the pin nailer was a must-have in this project. They're so small that they're indetectable, and we didn't feel like we needed to run out and try to find some kind of wood filler and then try to stain those pieces and get it to all blend. For the most part, you cannot see the pin nails. We decided to add some decorative trim to our RTA cabinets to disguise the seams between them. These little details make all the difference when you are trying to take something very simple and elevate it slightly so that it looks just a little bit more custom. We decided to run the trim all the way around the top, but in any areas like this small area, we decided to just do a little cap on it. That way it didn't make it so obvious that they were separate cabinets, but all of the seams were covered. And then of course you got to go back and do all of the caulking and filling and all of that. We also added some decorative trim around the top of the pantry. This is where we built a box that would extend the pantry to the ceiling, and this made it look just a little bit more intentional. And you may have noticed that we had this shelf installed earlier. We did actually have to go back and fix this. We have a piece of chair rail here, and then we have a board just sitting on top. Initially, we put in a board and didn't realize that it was slightly twisted and was giving a slanted illusion. So we ended up having to get another board and redo this. It was totally worth taking the time to do that. And then we just used a piece of cap molding to put that on the edge to add like a bit of a decorative edge and also just finish it off. In pursuit of a more affordable option for an unlacquered brass gallery rail, I found each of the pieces on a lamp parts site and created my own. So to make the posts, we needed threaded bull necks and threaded ball arm backs. We needed a few different kinds of the ball arm backs, some that were a T, so had a hole on both sides, some with one hole, so that we could use these for our end pieces, and a couple of 90-degree pieces for our corners. To mount our posts to the mantle, we needed these flanges so that we could screw them down into it, and then a piece that would connect the post and the flange together. In the end, the savings were over $50 for our gallery rail, so it definitely felt worth tracking down each of the items and piecing it together ourselves. Where we really saw the savings, though, was we ordered all of our pot rail pieces from the same place. And pot rails, when I was pricing them out, were costing $350 plus for not even very long pieces. So ours is about 50 inches long. It is much thinner than a lot of pot rails, but you can get bigger pieces from this site. I chose this one because I knew we weren't hanging anything heavy, and I really liked the decorative finials that we added. And now for the magic, the final touches that bring the space to life. Each piece tells a story, adding charm and character, weaving a whimsical and elegant tale throughout this room. In our initial design, we were going to DIY a panel for our dishwasher to make it look like a cabinet. However, we could not get our dishwasher to push back any further, and so we had to kind of scrap that idea. And maybe in the future we will buy a panel dishwasher, but for a temporary solution, we used this magnetic curtain rod, and I hemmed this little curtain to go here. This is very European looking, very cute, definitely pretty overpriced practical kind of thing. I have never hemmed anything before, so I was very proud of myself for being able to do it, but it definitely needs to be just a little bit shorter. I think it would be fun to switch the curtain out for different seasons, so we're gonna have fun with it while we have it.